Please excuse me if I get a little emotional because
Speak into the mic so we can hear you.
I was 47 years old and they gave me 23 years. They told me I wouldn't make it back to society until I was 71. So for me to be able to prepare for this day here is like a dream come true because, I mean, how you gonna prepare until you're 71 years old? By the grace of God, I got this freedom. I can say what I did, and I can say what Kim did, but this was all in the areas of the omen for me to stand here today and get his speech. In 2015, a detective came to my house. He called me first, and he asked me, I just want to show you some pictures. And I told him no. But then I called my friend and they said, well, just see what he's talking about, which is something that I would never do. So I followed that and invited the detective to my house. And when he came, he just showed me some pictures, but what he was really doing was an investigation. But I had nothing to hide. Matter of fact, after he left, I called him several times to ask him, can you please get me into the juvenile court system so I can give my testimony to kids? As this went on April the 1st, 2016, they picked me up. I had two small businesses of my own, so I was at one of the stores of the small business, and when I came out, I had my phone in my hand, my chirp and my vape, and I chirped the truck and stepped in, and when I looked in the rear view mirror, there was a black car on my bumper. I done nothing wrong, so I asked him what this was about. He told me he'd tell me shortly. Well, he handcuffed me and shackled me, and the next thing he said was, you have a warrant for attempted murder. And it was like, he just took my breath away. I was doing the right thing. Fast forward, I'm going to trial. In the midst of my first trial, they denied me going on with it. They called it a mistrial and said racial injustice by my attorney. Well, we set another trial date and I went in, and it was just, what bothered me the most, it wasn't the victim's testimony and the victim what she did, because as I'm out here in 2025, I'm starting to understand the culture of a person doing whatever they got to do to get out the trouble that they're in. What hurted me the most was, it was a young lady who I saved her life. Her friend called me to her house and said, help me drag her on the porch. I went to her house, and I wasn't gonna do that to that girl, and I brought her back to life. This is the same person who got on the testimony stand against me and said that I told them that I committed this crime. And it wasn't, it was crazy because I look at it as if, once again, I understand these people, not saying what they're doing is right, but you have no business using somebody else's life just so you can get out and get high again. And I looked at her as a friend, and she took my life. That hurted me worse than the testimony of the victim. Fast forward, she ended up getting out of jail, messing up her probation, but she stated to another associate of mine, yes, I lied on that nigga, fuck you. I'm gonna fast forward again. It took me all the way to what? 3 years. I was in Lucasville, and I was walking down the hallways every day saying, Lord, what am I gonna do if I lose this appeal? I said that every single day that I walked the halls of Lucasville. But it came to the fact that he had me, whether I knew what I was doing or not. And I went in that library with one finger and picked out 80 pages for my federal aid. At this time, I didn't have an attorney, but I had heard so much about Kim that I was going to do everything I possibly could to get her on my side. She accepted my case, not for the federal aid, but for post-eviction. One day we was in a hearing, an attorney visit, and it was her and Lauren, and Kim had said that she wanted to jump on my federal aid. And I told her no, because this is my baby. This is how I know I'm gonna get home. But what Ms. Corral didn't know was I wanted her bad on my case. I just didn't want to let her know that I did. So 2 weeks later, I called her and I told Kadia, I said sign on as my attorney of record. My federal aid had been in there at this time 2.5 years. The point about that was they weren't gonna let me win. I needed somebody on there in order for me to get free. She got on my federal aid and we waited it out. They gave us a certificate of appealability.
They denied him.
They denied the federal aid, but gave me a certificate of appealability. So I got a message one day on my tablet from Kadia that said, call me. And when I called her, she said, she was crying on the phone and said, they denied it, but they granted you a certificate of appealability. And I said, for what ground? And she said, for 2. And that's when I jumped for joy, because I knew I was coming home. Kim filed her the paperwork that she needed. We went to the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, but there was a problem. We had some transcripts where the state took the meat out. In those transcripts, the victim identified the person who committed the crime. This victim and this individual were friends. They was like knee-high to the sandbox together, did a whole lot of things. So before the detective came, the victim called their friend and asked them, did you try to kill me? Common sense would be, why would I call my mama and ask her why did she try to kill me? If my mama wasn't the one that did it. But the detectives wanted this case so bad that they turned around and took an innocent victim who suffered head trauma and brainwashed her into thinking that I was the person that committed the crime. I can go on and talk about the evidence as far as the threshold of the DNA was 75. And in March 1st of 2016, I was the very first person they used this new procedure with. And the procedure was to drop the threshold from 75 to 50 and stretch the DNA as much as they can to get a possibility. Now, anybody in this audience, if you drop blood and I test it, you're going to say 100,000, 1 million, 2 trillion. But this DNA was 1 in 155 for me and the victim both. And that's from stretching. So in the beginning at the 75 threshold, there was no DNA at all. They stretched it until they could. Then they came with cell phone tower evidence that I would have been teleported in order for me to have been in that place at that time. They was like 3-4 mile radiuses, but they put me at the scene of the crime. Fast forward, July 31st, 2024, 3 days before that, I had spoke to Kim, and I said, Kim, what's going on with these transcripts? And she said, Dave, I'm gonna go on and try to get them certified. Transcripts where the victim identified somebody else and said it wasn't me. So we was trying to figure out how we was gonna get these transcripts into the 6th Circuit because I didn't use them in the district court. Kim said, well, if nothing else, we can file a motion and attach them. And that's what we did. And on July 31st of 2024, they reversed my case and gave me a new trial. When I got back to the new trial, they transported me September the 27th of this year. Last year. September the 30th, I went in the courtroom for a hearing. They set a $500,000 bond, set a trial date, and said I was so dangerous that I really don't deserve to be out. Come back in February, they offered me time served, no probation, no parole. And I looked him in the eye and told him no. I'm not going, it was 10 years, but I'm not going to plead guilty just to get out of jail and have that on my conscience as you beat me and you didn't. So they said, since you're not going to take this deal, we're going to do what the 6th Circuit Court told us not to do anyway. We're going to bring the victim back and put him on the testimony stand and do the same thing over again. They done just that, along with some other constitutional violations where the prosecutor stood up and said, these cell phone towers are not, records are not authenticated. Kim fought it. The judge said, he's not trying to authenticate them, he's just trying to get them into evidence. So what you're saying, Your Honor, is that you allowing this evidence that's not authenticated, that shouldn't be in the evidence, you allowing it in. And she said yes. They did everything in their power to get a conviction. At one point in time, I had folded. I was downstairs, refused to put on my trial clothes. I cried and cried. And Allison Huff said to me, put them clothes on and let's go finish this. Kim said, it's okay. Let's go up here and do this. Put the clothes on and we went back to trial. And we watched them for 3 people that they had testify. They didn't testify. They took 2015 and 16 trial script records and read them in as if it was a play. 3 prosecutors. Nobody on the confrontation. You know, I can't confrontate transcript. So the jury heard with the same constitutional violations that was in 2015, they heard him again in 2025. So around March, I said, Kim, let's go back to the federal courts now. She said, okay. But Allison looked at me and said, no, we're going to double down on this one. Let's finish it. And I said, Kim, let's go. We went to trial. We lost. On March the 12th, they found me guilty. I didn't flinch one bit because I knew they was wrong and I was going to get back. We filed a motion back to the district court, and the district court set a hearing for us on April the 1st. When we went in there April the 1st, the district court said, Attorney General, you messed up. Well, the Attorney General tried to say that this case was vacated. What they did was they said they transported me from Richland Correctional to Portage County Jail, released me, rearrested me, and booked me back into the county. Like I said, I had been gone for 10 years. I didn't get out one day. So the Attorney General also said that I have evidence that his case was dismissed. And the judge said, well, told Kim, go over there and look at it. She went over there and looked at it. The Attorney General was strolling real fast and she couldn't see nothing. So she said, I'm gonna put it in the evidence, in the brief. Kim said, send it to me. To this day, we never got that from her. While we was in trial, Kim didn't know what I was doing. I would look over to her and I said, Kim, tell Lauren, I said, take those take that docket off. She took the docket off. Then I said, take that piece of paper from ODRC showing that I was never released. Those are the things that got me back. On May the 12th, we went back in the courtroom and the judge gave me my freedom with 75 days stay. What the stay was for, we didn't know. But I argued back and forth with Kim and I told her, this is what I want to do. And Kim said, no, this is what we're going to do. And I said, no, Kim, this ain't what we're going to do. We're going to do this. And she said, no, if you want to do it that way, go get another attorney. But she knew that I wasn't going to get another attorney.
She knew that.
Because I love this woman and I love that firm and I love what they do.
If you see me laughing, it's because of the 5 years, how long have we represented you?
6.
Dave educated himself about the law. He wrote his own habeas, and then we took it from there to the 6th and beyond. But every step of the way, whatever our plan was, however well researched or well presented to him, he was like, not him. That's not what we're going to do. And then not only would I have to argue with the courts, but I'd first have to argue with Dave. Like, Dave, we're going to do that. That's what we're going to do. And at one point, during our representation of him, Lauren and Katya and I went skydiving for Lauren's birthday, and he just thought that was the craziest thing he's ever heard. He would never, not in a million years, go skydiving. So right before his release, I was like adamant, they were not following the plan, we're following my plan. I'm the lawyer, I'm the boss. And that's just my personality anyway. So, knowing he would never ever want to go skydiving, I'm like, all right, bet. If you're not out by July 10th,
You gotta go skydiving.
you pick whatever you want, and I'll do it. But if you are out by July 10th, your ass is getting up in a perfectly good plane, and then it's jumping out. With me, with Lauren, with Katya, and we're doing a firm skydiving trip. So that's a bet he's not yet paid on, but if you see me chuckling every time, he's like, and then I told him, and then I told him.
You gotta skydive, bro. You gotta skydive.
And he was out July 3rd, so that gave us a whole week of cushion, and this man's getting up in a plane.
You owe it. Like, fuck that.
The crazy part about it is that on July the 2nd, we won
Damn.
again. And on July the 3rd, I was free. And on July the 4th, I was on a boat with my lawyer. He took that picture in front of the federal building on the boat and sent it to the prosecutor. The last thing that I would like to say is that in order for this is not enough. We have an absolute immunity bill that's on the ballot that everybody needs to vote on. Because if you don't vote on that bill, these things will still continue to go on. Because if I should be held accountable for my actions, you should be as well. You shouldn't have to violate my constitutional rights and don't have to accept the consequences. So the blanket need to come off in November, and we all need to get out there and sign that bill. And everybody that you should say should sign that bill, because none of us is off limits to the law. And they're going to do everything in their power to continue on. But evidently, the United States Supreme Court said this needs to go on. And we all need to get out there and sign that bill. And I appreciate every single person that's out here today. It's a blessing just to see you. Thank you.